So to begin, I'm just going to run it and see how it looks like. Once again, it asks me, would you like to assume that swing main contains the main method? I'm going to say okay, remember that. It's using very similar arrangement as the one prior to this, right? So we preserve the radio button. The radio button is still there, and we can even change the color, and it changes the color. But you can see that now what's visible there is File and Help menu, right? So if I say Help About, it doesn't do anything, and then when I say Help Open, it actually doesn't do anything either. But when I say File Exit, that does something, right? So some of these menu items are positioned properly, but do not have any useful payload for the application. But it demonstrates what needs to be done to create them. Okay, so let's explore the code. What I'd like to do at this point, since both of these projects appear to be so similar, I'd like to show you one technique that I use all the time to find out what's going on when you deal with multiple versions of the same project. You can download if you're using Windows, you can download a utility named WinMerge and install it. So WinMerge is basically an editor which allows you to compare. This is an open source project, and you can use WinMerge to compare different projects, compare different files, compare directories. So typically what you do in WinMerge, you just say WinMerge open, right? So you open, and this it opens this dialog box. If you want to compare a lot of things, you can say include subfolders, right? And I'll use include subfolders. And guess what I'll do? I just simply open my Windows Explorer window, right? And before I do anything else, I simply just open sample A8 source, right? Inside sample A8, what you can do, you can just basically use source and drag and drop source on the left hand side, and then go to sample A9, right? And likewise drag and drop source in the second box. And this way I can compare A8 and A9, and I will use include subfolders option. And when I click this, it tells me that you have some files in there, right? And these files are different, and this file is new. And my typical approach inside WinMerge view is that I keep on the right hand side, I keep like an older version, and on the left hand side I keep the newer version, so that, you know, I have a habit of using the tool consistently. And so let's see what the differences are, right? Frame application, I'm not expecting to see a lot of differences there, but if you highlight this item on the list and click compare, right, it highlights the changes, and this just simply is the tagging of the file, and I don't think there's much difference in the rest of this code. So I can ignore this difference and just close that. Let's take a look at the frame application closing. I'm sure that it's the same thing. It's just basically the title portion of it that's different. Ignore that. Frame radio buttons. This seems to be the frame that we're using. I'm expecting that this will have some changes in it, and yes, it does. So if you look at the at this comparison, you can see how easy it is to use WinMerge to spot the differences, right? So for instance, here in class radio buttons, in its newer version, right, right here, we have the set of new references to the menu bar, the menu, menu items, and so forth and so forth, right? So this is easy to spot. There's also the file menu exit listener, which appears to be working closely with one of the menu items, and it's visible in here. In the constructor, just notice that the WinMerge comparison interface compares everything side by side, and of course the constructor here is named the same way as our class is named, right? So we have frame with radio buttons, and what's new is that there's new call to say set menu. Apparently the demo, what the demo does, it's using a separate method to configure and set the menu inside the window. And so here it is. It just shows up next. I'm sure that we can explore this in the code when we open our project in NetBeans. But you can see that there is some work done apparently with respect to setting up the menu, including the listeners on menu items, which is kind of expected. What other differences are visible? There's some changes or updates and comments. I can largely ignore that. So you can see that for the most part, it's really just the configuration for the set menu. It's really not that complicated. The important thing to remember for us is to remember that there's a menu bar that we need to have, there's a menu that we need to have, and then of course there will be a menu item that we also need to have. And I think the next version of this exercise may be for us to use NetBeans to configure the menu and see how we can do that in NetBeans, right? So anyway, I'm going to close this file. Difference. Radio buttons, let's just do a quick comparison on that. There's just a set of comments which is different, basically the tagging of the file. Radio buttons listener, definitely same thing. We can largely ignore all of this very easily. The main worth taking a look. Again, not much difference. It's all just basically creating a frame with radio buttons, but this time the frame with radio buttons will also contain the menu bar and menus. That's fine. And finally, menu file exit listener is a new class which we added to this demo A9. Okay, so this time I can exit WinMerge, but remember that WinMerge can be your huge friend when comparing prior versions, newer versions, and oftentimes if you use a code control system, usually it has its own built-in facilities to compare the older and newer versions of the code. But if you're just using your desktop and simple environments such as NetBeans to write your code, you can periodically save versions of your code and use WinMerge to compare the before and after types of of parts of your code base, I guess, right? Just keep that in mind, that it's very easy and it's very friendly program, and I don't think I could be productive without having access to WinMerge. Okay, so WinMerge is our friend, but let's go back to the project, explore what happens here. And now I already know that frame radio buttons basically by using WinMerge, I already discovered that frame radio buttons is the source file that has undergone the most changes in this project, right? So besides adding this, let's just take a quick look at the code that sets up the menu. Let's see. I mean, number one, it's a separate method, but I don't think there are many surprises, and the comments here indicate basically, okay, you need to have a new menu bar, you need to add menu bar to the frame, you have to have a top-level menu, and you can name it File, and you can also have a top-level menu named Help, right? Because if I run this, if I run this right here, you see how these top-level menus are named File and Help, right? The two of these, File and Help, are the two top-level menus. They are menus, and they're added to the menu bar, okay? And then they become visible. Not very hard, right? But in sequence, as the menu is added, then notice that there's also a mnemonic which added to this. This one is F, and there's also mnemonic for help, which is H. Let me see how those mnemonics work. I'm just going to run this, right? Just run this, and if I press Control F or Alt F, I think. Actually, I'm not sure if they work for me right now. Oh, I see. The way it works is that in my case, it just seems to be this Alt F works. Alt F works. Huh. Where was it? Alt H. Yes, so this is Alt F and this is Alt H. Okay, so basically you get, I wasn't sure if it was very consistent, but we can research that later on. But anyway, obviously the mnemonics can be added, and they will behave basically by responding to the keyboard. Okay, so once we have the menu, such as File or Help, we add it to the menu bar, but then of course we create menu items, and then we say that each menu gets a list of these menu items, and things are getting populated. So basically all that happens there is that we configure our set of menus. And if I wanted to, so now the interesting part to look at one more time is to look at the menu file listener. See how at the top of the set menu we create menu file exit listener. So this is apparently an object entirely dedicated to listening to exits out of this menu, and this guy right here, menu file exit listener, of course it's getting given to the file exit menu item, but if I wanted to use the same listener or different listener, I could give other items the listener. And right now, as you can see, if I run this application, when I go File, Open, Help, About, those two things really don't do much. I think our next demo will show us more work done with the menu items. So right now, the only one that's working is this exit one, which gets this listener. And inside this listener, when we look at it, of course, it must have an action performed, and unconditionally under action performed, it just says, look, I know that I'm the listener to catch the exit, an attempt to exit, and just says system exit. Okay, so that's about what pretty much all that this specific demo does for us, and that's just the way this demo works. So let's go back to the slides very quickly and see what we can can grasp from some of this. Okay, so it's the same arrangement. It shows you what's really happening at runtime, who creates who calls who, and there's also a sequence of diagrams when you say file, exit. Obviously, we just get action performed. Inside the menu, file, exit, listener, which just says action performed and says system exit and exits out.